In our first story, Behind Mansion Walls, from Russia, with love.
She was absolutely beautiful.
High-tech money meets international intrigue.
Nina might be stealing his secrets.
And later, brave children.
2 little boys covered in blood.
Wonder who killed Mom.
Only thing he was interested in was money. Nothing else.
I'm Christopher Mason. Living large in the lap of luxury, life can seem like a delectable dream. But so often the rich just want more. Temptation waits behind mansion walls with a wicked menage a trois. Sex, money, and murder.
On a Saturday evening in the hills behind Oakland, California, Ellen Doran makes a desperate phone call to her best friend, Nina Reiser.
Called and called and called, and nobody answered.
Nina, I'm really worried.
She was supposed to meet Ellen at 6 p.m. for dinner that evening on September 3rd.
Ellen knows Nina well enough to know that something is very wrong.
Nina never showed up to meet with her friend.
Nina Reiser is a typical Oakland soccer mom with a twist.
Nina grew up in Russia.
Nina was well-educated. She was a doctor, and she was an OB-GYN.
There was no mistaking that Nina was beautiful. She drew people in with her personality and her looks.
Her disappearance strikes a chord with Henry Lee, a reporter at the San Francisco Chronicle.
I covered this case from the very beginning. When the first few news bulletins came out that Nina was missing, I immediately knew something was unusual.
Nina, 31, is separated from her husband, 43-year-old Hans Reiser. On the day she disappears, she is on her way to drop off their 2 children after a custody visit.
Nina took her 2 kids to a supermarket in Berkeley, and this was caught on camera. And it was then up to Nina to bring the kids to Hans's house in the Oakland Hills.
It's just another Saturday drop-off in just another fractured American family. Her 7-year-old son, Rory, says he waved goodbye to Mom that day.
I'll see you both later. Love you.
Rory gave certain accounts that Nina was last seen leaving up the stairs and left the house.
Rory would never see his mother again.
Nina completely vanished from the face of the earth.
Born in St. Petersburg, Russia, Nina Reiser never expected to end up in the suburbs of Oakland. She married into the great gold rush of the 21st century, computer technology. It made Bill Gates $59 billion and Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg $17 billion. Nina Reiser's husband, Hans, was eager to join the ranks of these legendary sultans of software.
Hans was extremely intelligent. He went to UC Berkeley as a teenager and decided to make computing his career. He started his own business, and he developed a file system that he named after himself called Reiser FS.
It was quite clear that he was a very bright man, but also very eccentric and, you know, a computer nerd, a geek. He was on his way to really making a lot of money.
In 1999, business is booming for Hans, but he's having trouble with another part of his life.
He knows a lot about computers, but socially he was pretty awkward. He did not know how to talk to people.
So where is a nerdy computer genius to find the love of a beautiful woman? The same place he sources much of his workforce, Russia.
While he was in Russia, he would frequently date women, sometimes out of catalogs.
On one of these dates, Hans falls for the translator, Nina. She's exotic, intelligent, beautiful.
Her mother and father were both doctors, and they lived in the well-to-do Russian middle class. So she wasn't one of these desperate women trying to escape a horrible situation.
Nina herself is a doctor, eager to practice in the U.S. But is it true love or a big opportunity?
It's hard to know what it was about Hans that captured Nina. He was an American man, seemed to be quite successful.
There were several people that thought that maybe she was a gold digger, kind of looking for her ticket to the States.
Hans Reiser's father has a different fear. Hans has some big backers, including the U.S. Department of Defense. Does his new wife have a hidden agenda?
He believed that Nina might be stealing his secrets.
By 2004, Hans and Nina have 2 children and a marriage that's heading for the rocks.
Does that mean we can go to the pool?
Hans didn't want Nina to become a doctor. In fact, he wanted her to stay home, have more children, and then really tend to the home activities and be a housewife or a homemaker.
Nina believed that she was like a locked bird in a cage, unable to get out, constrained by her husband, and told what she could and could not do.
Hans is also away on business in Russia for long stretches. So he arranges for some wife-sitting.
He left his best friend to look after Nina, pretty much with the instructions of, you know, take care of her, make sure nothing happens to her. And that was the beginning of the end.
Hans returns from Russia to a man's worst fear.
He was my best friend.
You were never here. What did you think would happen?
His wife and best friend sharing a bed. A bitter feud follows, and Nina files for divorce. It won't be an amicable split.
You ungrateful bitch.
You've never done anything for anyone but yourself.
Hans would fight Nina every step of the way during the divorce when they were arguing about what was best for the children.
I've been nothing but a loving father to his kid.
You don't know about love.
And for Hans, his main gripe is the raising of his son, Rory.
Nina didn't want Rory playing violent video games, and Hans encouraged it.
He believed Rory was just like him, perfect, that Rory needed to have the best doctors, the best teachers, the best kinds of experts available.
So on September 3rd, 2006, when Nina Reiser disappears, it isn't long before police return to her estranged husband's doorstep.
The police were quite interested in talking to Hans to find out where Nina was. Certainly, he was the last person who had seen her, and he might have some valuable information.
When told the mother of his children is missing, his first reaction is, talk to my lawyer.
He wouldn't answer any questions that the police had, and so it was obvious that Hans was unwilling to cooperate from the get-go.
Has he got something to hide, or has he fallen into a trap?
Nina was alive and well. This was part of a grand conspiracy to get him framed and convicted for murder and allow her to have custody of the children full-time in Russia.
Infidelity, divorce, custody, money, jealousy, and anger. It's fertile ground for murder.
Nina completely vanished from the face of the earth.
When Nina Reiser disappears from Oakland in 2006, police soon fear the worst.
She just wouldn't up and leave. She had ambitions. She had a new job. She had just gone to the store and she had bought groceries.
She was last seen by her estranged husband and their children on a Saturday afternoon on Labor Day weekend.
last known place that she was at Hans's home at probably 2:15, 2:30.
6 days later, her car is found abandoned just 2 miles away.
All of the groceries from her shopping trip were sitting in the back of her car rotting. Her purse was there, her money was there, her wallet, credit cards.
And her cell phone.
The battery is removed. I mean, people just don't drive around with the battery removed from their phone.
With the battery removed, the cell phone can't be tracked. Police turn to suspect number 1, the estranged husband, Hans Reiser.
Hans won't talk to the cops. He seems to be worried that bigger and far more dangerous fish are on his tail. When you mix connections to Russia and defense contracts, you get a plot right out of a Cold War spy thriller. And right now, Hans Reiser is acting like he's in the starring role.
He was engaging in counter surveillance, driving 10 miles an hour on the freeway, making unnecessary U-turns. He turned his cell phone off and was walking around without his cell phone on for days on end.
I ended up chasing Hans Reiser down the street in Oakland. I was trying to get comment from him, and instead of saying no comment or politely saying no thanks, he took off at full tilt, running at full speed away from me.
So, I mean, there's just a lot of behavior that just didn't fit. Didn't fit at all.
But the Oakland police have little else to go on.
Doing an investigation when there's no body, it's really hard.
One thing they're wondering about is, where is Reiser's car? He's been driving his mom's car since the day Nina disappeared. And 2 weeks into the investigation, in a back street of Oakland, his car is found.
It was missing the right front passenger seat. The carpets were completely soaked with water, as if someone had hosed the inside of the car out. I mean, it was really, really suspicious.
Hans had an outlandish excuse for everything. He said, you know, I decided that the car smelled of old milk stains from the kids, so I decided to wash it to get it all clean, and also remove the seat because I was sleeping in it, and I have a bad back, and I want to make it comfortable.
But Hans finds it harder to explain this.
There were 2 books found inside. There was a book on homicide and murder. There wasn't a book on where do I find my wife or how to find a missing person.
Cops decide to take a closer look at his house.
Investigators say blood found in Hans Reiser's house could belong to Nina Reiser. They found 2 books about murder in his car.
They found a blood stain about 3 or 4 feet from the front door that DNA results showed that was a mixture of Hans and Nina's DNA.
Even when there was no smoking gun, that all the pieces pointed squarely at him and only him.
Oakland DA Paul Hora thinks he's got enough to go to trial. Even though there's no body, no weapon, no eyewitnesses.
I was convinced that Hans was the killer. The challenge is whether or not I'm going to be able to convince somebody else.
After Hans Reiser's arrest, his children are sent to live with their grandmother, back in Russia. And at trial, he says that this is all part of Nina Reiser's master plan.
He suggested on the stand that Nina was alive and well and possibly framing him to make it look like he killed her.
He says that Nina is back in St. Petersburg, celebrating with a U.S. passport and the kids to herself. A perfect crime.
When I started the trial, Nina was gone and her kids were gone. And I was left with this possibility, well, maybe she's over there in Russia with her kids and her family and all's well.
But the DA presents damning evidence from a phone tap.
Hans placed a phone call to his mother about 2 weeks following Nina's disappearance, where he just unloads on her and he tries to convince his mother how horrible she is.
She didn't just abuse me. She looked for every possible way she could screw me.
And I said to the jury, he's just telling us why he killed Nina. That's what he was really doing on that phone call. He was trying to convince his mother why it was okay for him to kill Nina.
Then, a surprise witness returns from Russia, Hans's young son, Rory. And what he shows the court shocks everyone. A drawing he did not long after his mother disappeared. His dad dragging a large bag down to the basement. Is this how he last saw his mother? Hans Reiser has his back against the wall.
Hans demanded to take the stand against the advice of his attorneys. He spent 11 days testifying, and what came out of his mouth was pure arrogance, pure ego.
He underestimated the power of the jurors to see the truth. And he also underestimated the strength of the evidence against him. And in the end, you know, he helped the jury convict him.
We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Hans Reiser, guilty of a murder.
And on April 28, 2008, Hans Reiser is found guilty of first-degree murder. In California, the sentence is 25 years to life. That gives Hans pause for thought.
Before his sentencing in July, I made a deal with him because Nina's family was desperate for the recovery of Nina's body. And I agreed that I would reduce his first-degree murder to a second-degree murder conviction. In exchange, he would have to show me the location of Nina's body, he would have to tell me how he killed her, and he would have to waive all of his rights to appeal. He finally admitted that he did, in fact, kill Nina.
Handcuffed to his attorney, Hans leads police up into the Oakland Hills. And less than a mile from his house,
Police used shovels and began digging, and they found a sleeping bag buried inside the hole. And eventually they exhumed the sleeping bag and found Nina's body inside.
Nina Reiser's body in a bag, just like the one in her son Rory's drawing. And to get his plea deal, Hans tells the real story of Labor Day weekend, 2006.
He said that Nina did come to the house and that they started talking about the separation.
The two children went downstairs. And Hans and Nina had one last argument, one final bitter dispute.
Nina looked at him in a certain way and maybe smiled a certain way that Hans didn't like. Hans punched her and then choked her to death right there on the spot.
It was a very cold-blooded, callous attack, and all the more shocking because this happened while their children were downstairs.
And with his trademark efficiency, Hans goes to work, under cover of darkness, with a shovel.
He just unceremoniously dumped his wife's body in a sleeping bag into the hole, recovered it, and then pretended that nothing had happened.
I'm absolutely certain that Nina's body would have never been found had he not led us to the body. It was such a remote spot in just bushes, and she was so deep in the ground that she would have never been found.
Immersed in the sordid tale of his guilt, Hans still tries to wriggle free. He offers a motive for the murder. He says Nina had a rare psychological condition that was causing her to harm their children.
In the end, the way Hans justified Nina's death was that he believed that he was killing a woman who was a danger to his children.
But there's no evidence to support Reiser's claim.
Hans is now behind bars for at least 15 years to life, and unless he pleads for mercy and expresses remorse, he will not be released anytime soon.
And while Hans Reiser languishes in Pleasant Valley State Prison, Nina's family is finally able to bring her home.
Nina, instead of being buried in a hole in the Oakland hills, has been taken back to Russia. Her remains are now in Russia, and that's where her kids are now.
Hans killed his wife, a loving mother, a committed daughter, a doctor, and just a lovely lady.
The greatest tragedy of this case is the two young children, who are now effectively orphaned. They'll never see either parent again.
It's Sunday night of Thanksgiving weekend 1992 in the well-to-do suburbs north of Atlanta.
They ran hand in hand across the field, approximately 100 yards, to a home that had some lights on.
They arrive there and they ring the doorbell.
A suburban Christian ministry has some surprise late-night callers.
Two little boys covered in blood.
Hey, boys, what's happening? What's going on?
The boys lead the way to an SUV in a nearby field. When the door is opened, a woman's body tumbles out.
There was a lot of blood, there was a lot of gore.
Gruesome. Blew half her head off.
In 1992, people are being shot on the streets of Atlanta every day. It's become the most dangerous city in America, thanks to the crack epidemic plaguing the nation. But this victim is different. She is Sarah Tokars, the well-to-do wife of renowned attorney Fred Tokars, a wealthy, beautiful mother of two whose death will shock this freewheeling city to its core.
This case caught the interest of the whole metro Atlanta area.
For Atlanta's elite, it strikes too close to home in wealthy suburban Marietta. Sarah Tokars is one of their own. If she isn't safe here, who is?
People were very afraid for their wives, their children.
Sarah's husband, Fred, is a big-shot attorney, moving in powerful circles.
I came to know him and also his reputation there. Fred was known as being one who was smart, intelligent.
He knew a lot of people in the court system, in the political system of Atlanta. He was a real go-getter.
Working for the DA's office, Fred is a star prosecutor, locking up the bad guys. And Sarah takes notice.
He was dynamic in that he was a very hard-working young attorney. Because of the people he knew, I think that impressed Sarah. Fred's family was an upper-middle-class family, Sarah's family being a well-to-do doctor's family. So they both came from some means.
A successful lawyer from a rich family, a beautiful blonde doctor's daughter. It's a suitable match for blue blood breeding. They marry and have two sons.
Fred and Sarah were the perfect family, a family that you would expect to see here in the suburbs of Atlanta and in Cobb County.
Families like this are rarely touched by murder.
Something was just wildly amiss here.
Within hours of the murder, Cobb County DA Tom Sharon is called onto the case.
My first thought was, this just was not the type of neighborhood where you're going to see number one, a homicide, number two, a shooting in a vehicle in front of two little children.
At the scene of the killing, police find little physical evidence. What they do have are eyewitnesses, aged 4 and 6.
We were able to get information from Ricky, who showed tremendous poise for what he had just witnessed. I mean, he was able to give very detailed information while he was sitting in the ambulance, literally with his mother's blood and brains on him.
6-year-old Ricky Tokars tells police the horrifying story of the night his life changed forever. His mom had just arrived home from a family Thanksgiving vacation in Florida.
Get back in the car!
Sarah and Ricky were confronted by what Ricky described as a black man with a ski cap on, dark clothes, and what he called a pirate's gun.
His story gives police their first lead.
Once Ricky told us about a man coming from inside the house, the investigation shifted to the house. Was this a home invasion? Was there a burglary?
But the alarm was deactivated, and the back door was unlocked. The intruders had just walked into the house.
When the detectives did a detailed search of the home, they didn't find anything missing. Once we had the report from the officers who had done the search of the house, we started eliminating what would normally be crime scene scenarios. Number one, it couldn't have been a random home burglary where a burglar would place themselves in a position of actually getting in the car with the victim and having that victim drive them out, risking identification and discovery. Number two, obviously, whoever was in that house either wasn't in there long enough to steal anything, or more likely, wasn't interested in taking anything.
The death of Sarah Tokars is looking less like a burglary gone wrong and more like a targeted execution.
Somebody wanted Sarah Tokars dead. The big question was, who would want a housewife with two little boys murdered?
While Sarah Tokars is taking her last breath, her husband Fred is off on business in Alabama. Is he the real target of the killers? As a prosecutor with the DA's office, he had put away his share of dangerous criminals.
The detectives wanted to know a list of clients or people that he thought, names, that would have a grudge against him.
Is this a Cape Fear copycat? Revenge on a prosecutor's family? Young Ricky Tokars may have the answer as he bravely reveals more about his mother's murder.
They got approximately a mile and a half down the road, with Sarah pleading with the man with the pirate gun not to hurt her or her children, that she'd be happy to drive him wherever, but just leave us alone.
The man orders Sarah to turn right.
Just turn! Turn!
Sarah refused, Ricky said, and the gun went off.
Her body hitting the wheel caused the vehicle to veer to the left off the road and into an open field.
Ricky has been taught that a car should never be left running. His mom isn't moving. He knows he needs to get help.
Got out, unbuckled his 4-year-old brother, woke him up, and they ran hand in hand across the field.
But there is no helping Sarah Tokars. Random violence or coldly targeted hit. All police have is the eyewitness account of a 6-year-old boy, and not a suspect in sight.
We literally did not have anybody that you could point to, that you could even go question.
Until one man comes forward who can help those little boys find justice for their mother.
She said, if anything ever happens to me, will you promise me that you'll go to the police with everything you know?
In the affluent northern suburbs of Atlanta, the wealthy like to think they are safe from the crime that plagues some parts of their city. But Sarah Tokars didn't stand a chance.
This was one of the most horrible murders because of the manner and circumstances of the killing.
An ex-cheerleader and doting mother shot dead in front of her 2 boys. All police have is her son's eyewitness account. It was a black man with a pirate gun.
Her purse and all of her belongings were in the car, so we knew right off the bat that we We didn't have a carjacking or a robbery.
While it has all the hallmarks of a planned execution, police are baffled. Why Sarah? But Sarah would not have been surprised. She already feared this day.
Sarah Tokars told me if anything ever happened to her, would I take whatever information I had to the police officers.
Private Detective Ralph Perdomo was hired by Sarah before her death.
Sarah came in and sat down and told us that, she felt like her husband was running around on her and that he might be involved in other activities. We took the case and started it from there.
This is no easy case. Sarah Tokars is in fear of her husband. And if they end up in divorce court, he will hold all the cards.
Sarah figured with his relationship with all the police officers, his relationship with all the attorneys, that he could take the kids away. And that scared her. And she was just looking for some way to save her children. She did not want to lose her children. And Fred just threatened her and scared her to death. Scared her to death.
She warns Ralph Perdomo to watch his step.
She said that he had police protection everywhere as he went. Police looked after him, and that we would have a very hard time obtaining any kind of evidence on him. But I told her we would try, and we'd see what would happen.
When Sarah fell in love with Fred, he was an idealistic young prosecutor. But times have changed.
We need to talk.
Fred has a new passion that he holds above justice.
I can't say right now.
Fred needed money. He liked to have a good life. He wanted to spend.
One of his partners told me that Fred worshipped money. That's the only thing he was interested in, was money. Nothing else.
So we'll see a return in half the time then.
He felt like he wasn't making enough money as a prosecutor.
So Fred switches sides and turns defense lawyer with clients from the rough end of town.
He was in private practice representing drug dealers where the big money is, also with the people in the nightlife, the nightclub industry.
Fred becomes a Mr. Fix-It for the underworld, the go-to guy for hoodlums who need a creative attorney on the payroll. And Nerdy Fred gets a cool new nickname, The Man. He loves it.
I'm sure the club will be a great success.
Well, thanks to you, it will be.
Riding in limousines, throwing around a lot of cash, spending a lot of money, having offshore accounts in the Caribbean. He was frequenting a lot of these nightclubs where drug laundering money was going on. He was a frequent customer of strip clubs, all sorts of adult entertainment areas of town.
Guys, change the plan. Have a good meeting, all right? Have a good day.
This is not the kind of marriage that Sarah Tokars signed up for.
After the birth of their second son, Fred started to become more distant from the family.
It is my concern. You're supposed to be spending time with the kids.
Evenings, he would never be home for dinner. Weekends, he always seemed to have business away from home.
You'll get over it.
Fred clearly was not interested in maintaining a married life with Sarah and two boys.
Sarah suspects her husband of infidelity. Her private detective confirms it.
He was associating with people he shouldn't be associating with. And she found out that Fred was running around on her through the private investigator she hired.
Hookers and limos. Affairs with strippers. It's a well-to-do wife's worst nightmare.
This ultimately led to her wanting a divorce from Fred.
But Sarah is paralyzed by fear.
She truly believed that Fred had enough contacts that she would lose her children and be penniless. And so she was very reluctant to go forward.
Sarah needs some serious leverage to challenge a man of Fred's position. Fred has many secrets. Some of them are locked inside his safe. And Sarah knows the combination.
She started finding paperwork that suggested that he was setting up offshore accounts in the Caribbean, in the Caicos Islands.
It's direct evidence of money laundering on a grand scale.
I said, make 2 copies of them. Give one to your attorney, give one to a good friend, and put them back before Fred gets home.
Now, Sarah has the power to scare Fred into a divorce, one that will give her custody of the children. She confronts her husband.
We're getting a divorce.
And that's really where she was in November of 1992 when the murder took place. And she had told Fred that she was after divorce, and she had information on him.
You just be careful now, Sarah.
The private detective's revelations make Fred look like a prime suspect in his wife's murder. But Fred was in another state on the night of the shooting. Police need to find the trigger man. And one lady in Atlanta holds the answers.
What's your emergency? I want to report a shooting.
Tuesday Rower came forward with how she helped him wash blood off of his sneakers.
In the wealthy suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, the rich are consumed by the murder of one of their own. Attractive mother of 2, Sarah Tokars.
Cameras were camped outside the police department, and there were daily news conferences.
A $25,000 reward is offered for information leading to Sarah's killer. And in the poor end of town, Tuesday Rower knows who that killer is.
I want to report a shooting.
It's her brother Curtis, a desperate crack addict.
We found out where he was living with the help of the Atlanta Police Department. We went to that location in Atlanta and arrested him.
It turns out Curtis has been bragging around the neighborhood about his diabolical handiwork. When police come knocking on his door, he hides under the bed. Desperate and strung out, he knows why they're here, and he's terrified. A black man who murders a rich white woman in Georgia is in deep trouble.
Curtis Rower, the trigger man, immediately confesses on tape. Yes, I was the one that kidnapped him. I'm the one that was holding the gun.
But he says the gun went off by accident, bumped by her driving.
Well, the obvious next question was, if you weren't concerned with killing her, why were you out there? And that's when we started to get the information that Curtis was hired to shoot this lady, that he, in fact, was going to receive $5,000.
To think that $5,000 could buy a trigger man to murder a woman in the presence of the 2 boys is unthinkable. But the truth of the matter is that he would have done it for $500 to get money for dope.
Curtis is no hitman. He's a junkie who'd do anything for cash. And now he's got a shot at death row. It's not long before Curtis tells who paid for the hit. A man named Eddie Lawrence.
He was about 26, 27 years old at this time. Very clean cut, very dynamic speaker.
Twice as fast, sir.
He had a home improvement, real estate business.
Eddie Lawrence is well known as an ambitious young businessman who looks like he's going places.
Within a very short period of time, the police arrested Eddie Lawrence.
Eddie has some connections with the big end of town. His partner in a construction firm is Fred Tokars. Curtis Rower's sister, Tuesday, is Eddie's secretary. Investigators now have a direct link between Fred and the man who murdered his wife. Fred is visiting with Sarah's family when there's a call for him.
So Fred picked up the phone.
Captain Deal with Cobb County Police. Yes, sir.
Captain Deal said, Fred, we got great news.
I want you to know we've made 2 arrests in your wife's murder.
Okay. One of them is your business partner, Eddie Lawrence. Silence on the line. Finally, Fred said,
Okay.
The next day, Sarah's family can't get a hold of Fred. They rush to his hotel room.
They got the hotel manager to come and open it up, and Fred was laying unconscious on the bed. And there was a suicide note, basically saying that he had been hounded by the press. Nobody believed him, that he just had to end his life.
Fred has taken an overdose of pills, but he doesn't die. Sarah's father, a doctor, saves his life.
When I got the telephone call that Fred Tokars was in the hospital and had tried to take his life, right on the heels of Eddie Lawrence and Curtis Rower being arrested, we said, we know, we got our man now.
Fred Tokars doesn't think so.
I emphatically deny any involvement in my wife's murder.
He holds a press conference after his overdose, mourning for his wife.
The murder of my wife, Sarah, was the most tragic event that has ever occurred to me in my entire life. I am
and mourning for himself.
I became very depressed and started to think of the lifestyle that I was losing. Not only my wife, but my whole lifestyle.
But Sarah Tokars' father is convinced that Fred is lying. He has a simple test for Fred's guilt.
Sarah Tokars' father, who was a very sharp man, even for his advanced years, kept pressing Fred. Fred, who knew the door wasn't locked, the sliding glass door to your house? Who knew Sarah was coming home from Florida at this time? Did you tell anybody? Who would want to hurt Sarah? Why?
Who knew that Sarah and the kids would be arriving home alone at exactly that time of night? Who could have tipped off the killers to be waiting? Only one person, Fred Tokars.
As this questioning continued from Dr. Tokars, Fred started drawing further and further away, and in their estimation started shutting down from them and also the police. It was a period of time where you could see the transformation of the family from nurturing and consoling Fred to starting to question him.
8 months later, Eddie Lawrence cracks.
When they saw we had a case on him and we were seeking the death penalty, he decides to cooperate. So he tells it all.
Eddie owed Fred Tokars $70,000. If he found someone to kill Fred's wife, Fred would cancel the debt.
We need to talk.
Eddie also knows all about Fred's laundering of Atlanta drug money. In 1993, Tokars is found guilty of racketeering and sentenced to life without parole. But the state of Georgia wants Fred to pay the ultimate price. In 1997, he goes on trial for his wife's murder.
If there's ever been a case that deserved the death penalty, this was one of them.
Get in, John. You take care.
But Fred Tokars is a top lawyer. He knows just how to play a big criminal trial. And he can bankroll some heavy hitters to sit in his corner.
Hello?
He had a stellar defense team. He had probably one of the nation's best criminal defense attorneys. It was an expensive defense team. Fred was always maintaining his innocence. During the whole trial, he almost struck a studious, almost stoic appearance. He looked like a young college kid. They'd have him dressed in an open-neck shirt and like a sweater vest. He wore horned-rimmed glasses that made him look almost kind of like a Harry Potter or a very studious student. Showed very little emotion during the trial. Even when his young son, Ricky's testimony was played in court, he showed no emotion, which was a very emotional little crying boy giving his testimony.
And while Fred puts on a strong show of innocence, the prosecution has a serious challenge ahead of them.
This was a difficult case from a prosecution standpoint. We had to rely on people who were known liars, cheats, and criminals.
But Atlanta's underworld gives some compelling testimony.
Actually had a prostitute testify on trial that one night Fred picked her up in a limousine.
Know anyone who can get rid of her for me?
During the course of their riding in the limousine,
she knows too much.
He told her that he was no longer in love with his wife and, in fact, needed to get rid of her.
In March 1997, more than 4 years after Sarah is murdered, the jury finds Fred Tokars guilty. He escapes death row and gets life.
Sarah's family were very sorrowful about the jury not imposing the death penalty. They wanted to see the ultimate sentence imposed.
On the inside, Fred Tokars has turned informant. Now he is in the federal prisoner witness protection system. His exact whereabouts are a closely guarded secret.
There's no lower human being on earth. In fact, he is completely inhumane.
He was an extremely selfish individual. What Sarah thought was a good drive to get ahead was a greedy drive to be rich and powerful.
I wish I could have done more for her. I honestly, sincerely wish I could have done more for her.
Lust, wealth, and power can be dangerous bedfellows, but sometimes the rich just can't help themselves. To punish her infidelity, Hans Reiser killed his wife with his bare hands. Fred Tokars had the mother of his children executed to protect his sordid lifestyle. Sex and money led them into temptation. They thought murder was the only way out. Till next we meet, behind mansion walls, I'm Christopher Mason.
In our first story, Behind Mansion Walls, a Florida party prince.
Ferraris, Bentleys, private jets.
Is a man of many faces.
You might want to tell your boss that she's dating a spy.
And later, on Manhattan's Upper East Side.
He was executed right in the street in front of his apartment building.
It's open season on Millionaires.
I want more than that.
That's when all hell broke loose.
I'm Christopher Mason. The wealthy and powerful can dazzle us with their glamorous lives. But don't be seduced by the golden charms of the rich. Blinded by $1 million smile, no one suspects the killer inside.
Palm Beach, Florida.
People who live there, they're not millionaires, they're billionaires.
This is where the 1% show the 99% what they're missing out on.
Palm Beach Island is very much a playground for the rich. It's a very exclusive neighborhood. It's almost like the Beverly Hills of the East Coast.
It's fast money, it's fast women, fast cars. You know, it's like the Miami Vice idea didn't come out of nothing.
In the year 2000, a new player is making a big splash in the Palm Beach scene. Thanos Papallexis, 28 years old, son of a Greek shipping magnate, dripping with gold and women.
He was always surrounded by hot women, and he had an entourage of friends, like a celebrity of some kind.
He would have real exclusive parties, you know, high-end. You know, he would invite all the who's who of the Palm Beachers.
The parties are a honeypot of wealth, staged to draw investors into the web of Thanos Papallexis.
Tony. Hey, Thanos. Great to see you.
Once ensnared, he wants them to sign up for his luxury goods club.
What happened is you paid a couple $100,000 at first, and then tens of thousands a year to keep your membership up.
Come on inside, grab a drink.
And for this, you would have access to a mansion on a canal in Miami, a fleet of fancy cars, Rolls-Royce, Ferraris, Mercedes. You could get a few trips on a private jet.
All the trappings of extreme wealth without the expense. The super rich of Palm Beach like the sound of that.
He discovered Palm Beach Island. He discovered the wealth on the island. He discovered the people on the island. And he quickly discovered that he was able to infiltrate those people, gain their trust.
What did you think?
Oh, I think it's a great idea.
It's a fantastic idea.
He managed to weasel his way into society there. He did a couple of charity galas where, you know, in Palm Beach, is nonprofits and charity is a big business. And the way a charity raises money in Palm Beach is by having a black tie sit-down gala. And Thanos went to a few of those, and that's how you sort of weasel your way into society here. By going to these charity galas, you might sit at the table of somebody and you become friends and that sort of stuff. So he played that game too a little bit. Everybody is sort of a phony in Palm Beach. But the difference between most Palm Beachers and Thanos is that most Palm Beachers do have the money, and Thanos didn't, and he managed to make people believe that he did.
As partygoers arrive at Thanos' $5 million beachfront mansion, they don't realize that it's only a rental. Even a former president drops over for a fundraiser.
Everybody's eyes widen because Bill Clinton shows up, the president, to have a fundraiser at that mansion.
Thanos Papallexis is now Palm Beach royalty. He even buys his very own throne. From gold leaf and red velvet, he commands his new kingdom of wealth. But money isn't his only obsession.
We understood that Thanos was throwing certain parties on the island behind some of the walls of these mansions where they were sex-related parties with escorts, probably some drug use.
They all end up naked and all having sex together. It sort of got a buzz in Palm Beach. It was sort of the place to go for a little bit.
Thanos admits he has an insatiable appetite for sex that his wife alone cannot satisfy. It will take the talents of a very special lady to quell the desires burning in his finely tailored trousers. She's blonde, buxom, and costs a tidy $2,500 a night. Miss Rebecca DeFalco.
Thanos was already very well established in the Palm Beach set by the time I encountered him. He had already really made a name of himself, and he was very well recognized. After our first, I would say, introduction or encounter, he called me the next day and said, I have to see you again. I have to see you again. I have to see you every day this week. And that to me was, you know, any girl would be flattered.
Papallexis woos Rebecca the only way he knows how. He pays her $10,000 a month to make him her only client.
He, of course, lavished me with plenty of things and financially put me in a place that said, you're not going to work anymore. He was very romantic. He was a charmer, of course. So he made me feel very loved and at times very, very safe.
In Rebecca DeFalco's line of work, there's one line you should never cross.
Falling in love with Thanos just isn't something that takes its time. It happens so rapidly. We fell in love, or I fell in love. Definitely.
It all feels so Pretty Woman.
Cheers.
Until it turns James Bond.
We met for lunch, and he said, there's something I need to tell you. And I said, well, tell me. And he said, I actually work for MI6, also for some American agencies as well. But my family doesn't know about it, and it's just something that I do.
Rebecca is slowly discovering that there is more than one version of Thanos Papallexis.
Thanos lived several different lives at once. He had a girlfriend, he had a wife and a child, he had a mistress.
Thanos had portrayed to Rebecca DeFalco that he was some sort of double agent.
There was so many identities that he had to keep up. He was just so good at keeping all of them up.
Secret agent Papallexis has his new love convinced.
I remember we would be staying at a hotel, and all of a sudden some documents would be slid under the door.
What's that?
And it would have the government seal of the CIA. I mean, the efforts involved were enormous. I mean, it just really was over the top.
And as Rebecca DeFalco falls further in love, she plays straight into the hands of a very dangerous man.
Thanos did everything he could to appear to the outside world that he was a super agent, that he was very wealthy, that he was smart as they come. Whatever he needed from you, he would first understand what you needed, and then he would attempt to make himself appear as if he was the perfect person for your needs.
It was easy for him to sweep me off my feet. It was like a few minutes of skepticism, but then it was more like, okay, I'm just overwhelmed with his presence.
In the case of Rebecca DeFalco, she clearly wanted someone who cared for her and looked after her and sort of wooed her into a relationship. And so he became an MI6 agent. And he became the secret agent that, you know, would contact her when he could if he wasn't out on a mission.
I'm going to have to go away for a while.
Surrounded by an unreal world of money and glamour, it's hard to separate fact from fiction. Then, Rebecca stumbles on a shocking slice of truth.
Is it Thanos?
Have you ever killed anyone?
He held my hands.
Listen.
And he looked at me very emotionally, almost with tears in his eyes. He says, yeah. Yes, I have.
Palm Beach, Florida, 2004.
Cheers.
International playboy Thanos Papallexis is charming his lover, Rebecca DeFalco.
I say that all the time.
He weaves tales of his top secret life as a spy.
What's that?
He would always have me in contact with the handler if he was out of town or if he had to go on a mission.
Thanos would later admit that the missions and the stories are all fantasy. But as a love-struck Rebecca falls into his world, she stumbles across his biggest secret.
Look, I'm sorry for the delay.
Okay, you date a spy, and there's always an itching question that's tickling your brain that says, I wonder if you've ever killed anybody, because you're a spy. You know, you're a good guy. You're a guy that, you know, gets rid of bad guys. You always wonder, you're 007, have you ever killed anybody? I said, Thanos.
Have you ever killed anyone?
And he turns around so slowly. He held my hands, And he looked at me very emotionally, almost with tears in his eyes.
A few years ago.
He says, yeah. Yes, I have.
London, England, March 2000. A decaying warehouse on the city's north side.
There was a victim who was tied up, who was beaten, who endured some torture for some period of time, and who was eventually killed. And then his body was placed in a pit at the bottom of that building where they usually store cars.
The Metropolitan Police Service finds the body of Charlie Christodoulides, a quiet 57-year-old who lived alone in the small apartment above the warehouse.
Scotland Yard described the scene as very gruesome. There was blood on the wall. Obviously, there had been a serious beating.
Charlie Christodoulides is a gentle chap with a curious daily ritual. Dressed in a tailored Savile Row suit, he places a few small bets on the horses, then catches the bus to Piccadilly Circus. There, he sits alone in a fast food restaurant till the early hours. The kind of man who'd never hurt a fly.
Charlie was a fixture in that neighborhood. Everybody knew him.
It was a very heinous crime to a guy who we understood didn't hurt anybody, didn't have any bad bone in his body. He just wanted to be left alone, enjoy his family on occasion, drink at the local pub, and play some bets.
They knew that the victim really wasn't involved in anything heavy, in any criminal activity or anything like that. So this was a puzzle for them.
The detectives from Scotland Yard like nothing more than solving a cryptic murder mystery. This one will keep them busy for 7 long years.
So the case lingered on for quite some time, but they kept it on their radar screen, and they didn't let it go, and had never given up on this victim.
Back in Palm Beach in 2006, Thanos Papallexis is piling up the cash from his fractional ownership business. People are paying thousands to gain access to his fleet of millionaire toys.
So I started writing about whether the business was a solid one, whether the people who would join were going to get their money's worth.
Local journalist José Lambier goes digging beneath the Papallexis throne.
I find out several things. First of all, he doesn't own an island in the Bahamas. The Bentleys were getting repossessed. The pilots were calling me saying, you know, the planes are not his. It was so clear that this whole thing was just smoke and mirrors.
And when the story hits the papers, José gets a call.
Listen, Jose.
From Papallexis.
He started threatening. You know, he says, Jose,
I'm a really bad guy.
Now I started cracking up.
No. You don't understand.
And he said, no. He says, you don't understand. I can have you and your family killed.
You understand me?
I thought he was kidding at first. And this is America. Nobody threatens reporters here.
I can have you.
Thanos is deadly serious. He has killed before. He kills when someone gets between him and money.
Thanos Papallexis in England was trying to make a name for himself as a developer. And what he did is he bought distressed properties around London and sold them at a profit.
We're gonna make a killing on this place.
In 2000, he's poised to buy an empty warehouse in North London. He has a second buyer lined up who he will flip it to for a juicy profit. But he has to move fast.
Thanos had signed a high-interest loan on this building. But every day, it was costing him thousands of pounds to not sell it.
The problem is, there's a quiet, harmless man living above the warehouse, Charlie Christodoulides. And Charlie doesn't want to move out of his humble apartment.
Unfortunately for Papallexis, in order to resell that building, he had to get that person out of the building.
Then Charlie turns up dead.
The police knew that Thanos wasn't going to get his money as long as this guy was living there. The second he became a person of interest and detectives were knocking on his door and asking him questions about the crime, Thanos packed his bags and moved over to the States.
Out of reach of Scotland Yard, Thanos builds his new life as a Palm Beach playboy, while detectives quietly build a case.
What Scotland Yard found was cigarette butts. They didn't have much to go on, but they eventually found cigarette butts.
And those butts have DNA on them that matches Thanos' Papallexis.
He claimed that he had been at the warehouse so many times in the past before the homicide to buy, to check out the place, to do all these things that he chain smoked and left his cigarette butts behind.
There's DNA from 2 other men found at the scene. Their records sit unmatched in a crime database for 6 years, until one is arrested on a minor drug charge. He leads police to his friend, and detectives find they have Thanos' hired muscle under arrest. The pair admits to cleaning up the murder scene and disposing of the body, but that's all. They say the killer is Thanos' Papallexis. In the office of the federal marshals in Palm Beach, the phone starts ringing.
We received a call in the summer of 2008, our office here in South Florida, from the UK.
We were given a warrant through Interpol for a homicide out of the UK.
They had put together enough evidence in the United Kingdom for a case against Mr. Papallexis, but they didn't know where he was at the time.
Federal marshals set out for one of Papallexis' usual haunts, a fancy pizza restaurant on the water at West Palm Beach.
There was 2 young ladies sitting at a table next to Papallexis and his group, and I remember the one young lady looking at my partner Mike and I and saying, as if she was joking, "Are you here for my friend?" And as we got closer, we laughed and we said, "No, we're not here for you." And I remember making eye contact with Papallexis and saying, "We're actually here for you." And his eyes got about the size of saucers and his mouth fell open. His business partner just kind of sat there and looked at us, and then the woman that he was with began to break down in tears.
Papallexis is deported back to England to face murder charges. And reading the news of his arrest sends an ex-lover into a spin.
What do? You just start pacing like a racehorse, just trying to figure out what the... I know this story. Oh my God, I didn't want to know the story. I, prayed so many times to God, I just don't want to know the story. And I did.
Rebecca DeFalco has heard Thanos confess what happened in that North London warehouse. In 2004, in a suite at the Four Seasons in Palm Beach, she thought it was some spy fantasy.
Thanos, have you ever killed anyone?
In 2008, she realizes his horrific story was true.
A few years ago.
I remember every detail of that moment. Every detail. I remember the smell of the room. I remember what I was wearing. He got very emotional, and his voice gets very soft. And he tells me the story about how this man was strangled.
Last chance.
I just remember how he told me about how he wouldn't die. And there were 2 other men with him. They tried strangling him. And they were asking him a lot of questions, and they were beating him.
I gave you a chance, huh? You want to test me?
It's too much for me to, the graphic detail of what I envision in my mind and what he was telling to me is a burnt image I can't get rid of. It was a completely innocent man. This man did no harm. This family's been suffering for almost a decade to try to find the killer.
For Thanos Papallexis, one man's life was a tiny price to pay so Thanos could get what he wanted.
I think Thanos took a lot of shortcuts to get to whatever end goal he was looking at. Whether it was a business deal, whether it was trying to date a particular woman, anything that he thought he wanted, the means to getting that were of little consequence to him. And the damage that he would cause to anybody along the way were of little consequence to him.
Thanos turned wealth into a deadly tool. Money was his lure and his weapon.
I think more than anything, Thanos was characterized by a man who was trying to control his own world. He was certainly greedy, and he certainly liked money, but I don't think that was his primary motivation. I think that he used money as a means to control the people around him. He wanted to be the center of attention, he wanted to be the it man, and he wanted to be the person that people went to when they needed things.
In 2009, the family of Charlie Christodoulides finally get the closure they've been waiting for. In London's Old Bailey Criminal Court, Thanos Papallexis stands trial for murder. The star witness is Rebecca DeFalco.
I knew this was Judgment Day for him, and he felt it. You could tell by his mannerisms. He was scared. He was nervous. He wouldn't look up. He was shaking. He was rocking back and forth. You could tell this was not a man that was innocent. By no means.
Papallexis is found guilty of murder and sentenced to life with a minimum of 20 years.
Every facet of life he's been involved with in the U.S. is worse off because of his presence. And to me, that's how you can define evil.
I think it was probably a little bit unfortunate that in this trial of sex and lies and con men and Ferraris and mansions, that there was just a gentleman in England who was living a simple life. He didn't want anything complicated. And that was taken away from him in a very brutal manner that he didn't deserve.
Last chance.
You never really come to terms with it. This is something in your life that you never forget. I'm just grateful that I did the right thing. I wanted this out of me, done with. And for the most part, I wanted justice for that family.
The Upper East Side, Manhattan, October 1990. East 69th Street. Wealthy businessman George Kogan walks home from the grocery store.
And when he returned to the block to go into the building, the shooter approached from behind.
It was a snub-nosed revolver, .44 caliber. Got him in the back and just flew him forward. Groceries strewn all over the sidewalk.
He was shot at 10:15 in the morning, and he was in surgery the better part of the day. But they could not save his life.
In the late 1980s in New York City, it's boom time. The era of greed is good. Wall Street is going up. Real estate is going up. And riding the boom is George Kogan. Everything he touches turns to gold.
George Kogan was a very affluent businessman who had investments in hotels, antique stores, jewelry stores, and property all throughout the world.
He was in real estate. He had businesses. He had stores in Puerto Rico. His family owned New York department stores. He was a wealthy individual.
George and wife Barbara split their time between Puerto Rico and New York. In 1986, they decide it's time to settle in Manhattan.
When their two boys grew up, one away to college, then Barbara and George started looking for property in New York.
Hi, George. Hey, how was your day?
Manhattan was a huge change, but Barbara settled in really well.
A high school beauty queen, Barbara Kogan was a fixture on the social pages back in San Juan. In New York, she aims for the same. The Kogans decide to open a high-end antique store. Kogan and Company.
First thing they did was hire a PR firm and got on page 6 of the New York Post a few times with their store.
And the PR company thinks the best way to make a splash is to throw a serious opening party.
It was quite a party. I know because I was there. The Kogans hired me to play piano and entertain their society guests. It seemed a delightful evening. But as I mingled among the diamonds and furs, I missed a little intrigue. A beautiful young woman had caught the eye of a much older man. Millionaire party host, George Kogan.
For the opening of the store, the publicity firm sent, as an account executive, Mary Louise Hawkins.
She was very pretty, blonde, and George was just kind of an average-looking guy, but quite successful, and he was quite a charmer. She fell for him.
Mrs. Kogan had initially thought that Mary Louise Hawkins was a good match for her son. It didn't work out that way.
George is 49, Mary Louise, 28. But that's no problem. Age is no barrier to romance when there's money to smooth the way. Wives are a different matter.
Barbara found out about the affair because she started getting hotel bills. Her husband was traveling on buying trips and was taking Mary Louise with him. And then she started seeing the bills.
He told Barbara that he was going to be moving out and moving in with Mary Louise, which was a total shock to her. What he did was he bought a poodle for Barbara. Then he moved out and moved in with Mary Louise. And I guess in his place, he left the poodle.
Traded for a young blonde. Placated with a poodle.
That is not acceptable. I want more than that. You understand? More.
Barbara Kogan gathers her forces for a bitter divorce. She won't be leaving this marriage empty-handed.
More than that. You understand?
Mrs. Kogan was not happy with the settlement that was tentatively given to her. Initially, she wanted $5,000 a week to maintain her lifestyle.
Barbara was used to a certain standard of living.
What do you think of this? Is that beautiful or what?
She was spending on American Express $250,000 a year. I mean, if you're spending that sort of money, it's like Michael Jackson proportions, I'd say.
The battle rages for 2 years. Their son acts as a mediator until 1990, when George and Barbara are ready to make a deal.
And George had ironed out and had drafted an agreeable divorce settlement. He was meeting with Barbara to finalize it so they could finally get on with their lives.
On the very morning George is due to sign the agreement, he slips out to buy some food.
He was hurrying back to Mary Louise's apartment when a gunman came up behind him and blasted him with 3 gunshots in the back.
Oh my God!
George fell to the ground. The doorman ran over to him. The doorman knew who it was, and the doorman called up to Mary Louise. Mary Louise came down and was in total shock.
George is rushed to the hospital.
George lasted 7 hours. They did several surgeries. He went into a coma.
Around 4 o'clock, they declared that George had died.
A gunman who appears from nowhere, then dissolves back into the crowd. The only evidence he leaves behind are the bullets in George Kogan's back.
They removed 2 slugs, one fairly good from George's body, and that's the evidence. That's all they had, 1 slug. The other kind of disintegrated, and there were 3, but they never did find the 3rd slug.
The slugs tell a story. They are hollow points, bullets that almost guarantee the death of those they hit.
The point of hollow point bullet is that it opens up upon contact and it's designed to cause the greatest damage possible. Not a bad tool of the trade for a hitman.
This looks like a professional job. Who shot George? Police have their theories. You don't make millions in Manhattan being nice to people.
It appeared like it was a gangland slaying.
George had business enemies. It could have been some bad dealings in Puerto Rico. It could have been the Russian mafia.
George Kogan never saw it coming.
It was a slick killing. Gunman comes up unprovoked, out of nowhere, shoots him 3 times in the back and disappears.
It's broad daylight on a busy sidewalk on New York's Upper East Side. A brazen hit. And the shooter? He evaporates into the crowd.
George was shot from behind. The doorman didn't see anything. And the people on the block did not have the greatest opportunity to observe.
Manhattan back then was nothing like the tourist-friendly streets of today. You walked fast and kept your wallet close. Mugging was a daily risk. In 1990, New York held the grim title of murder capital of the United States. For now, George Kogan's killers can breathe easy. With few leads, the case goes to the bottom of a very big pile.
The initial detectives and the detective squad couldn't dedicate an entire team to this on a full-time basis.
But a few years later, a hard-boiled New York police detective is brought in to reopen the case, Joe Buffalino.
Initially, it was a very tough case to figure out. We started to look at some of the old witnesses. We re-interviewed the girlfriend of George Kogan, Mary Louise. We spoke to relatives of Mr. Kogan. We went to Puerto Rico, we spoke to the son.
Investigators focus on one big question. Who ponied up the cash to get George rubbed out?
And you had 2 different theories. One was the theory of the backdrop of this horrible divorce. The other theory was that George had a lot of businesses going and he owed money to people.
And what about George's alleged connections with the Russian mob? Those guys don't play nice.
We looked into the possibility of George Kogan having a bad business deal. And we realized that there were some deals that didn't go according to plan.
There were interviews of people to whom he owed money or who owed money to him. He had sold a hotel and casino to a group of people, and they were defaulting on the payment.
But someone else is on the detective's radar.
How's that feeling? Is that a little bit tight? No, it's fine. Okay, great.
George's wife, Barbara. On the day of his shooting, she was acting very strangely.
Barbara was incoherent, and it was decided that Barbara should have her hair done.
So I was thinking a little bit about your hair.
So a hairdresser came in and did Barbara's hair for $500.
As desperate calls come in from her estranged husband's deathbed, Barbara doesn't budge.
Barbara stayed in her Fifth Avenue apartment and did not go to the hospital. That was a bad sign. That was the first red flag.
Do you want to get that? No. No.
Just leave it.
Husband was in the hospital, and she continued to have her hair done. Everyone thought that was a little odd. It wasn't a typical loving relationship.
That heartless $500 haircut sends up the red flag. Barbara's fascination with life insurance gets it waving.
The insurance company had gotten calls from Barbara Kogan a week before the homicide asking
So the policy is still in effect?
if policies on George Kogan's life were still in effect and who was the beneficiary.
And Barbara Kogan is the sole beneficiary. Kogan.
There were actually 3 policies, totaled $4.3 million. During the divorce, she couldn't afford anything else, but she actually made payments and kept that policy up.
Good.
That was the thing that really sort of yanked the police officer's focus away from a possible business motive and turned it to Barbara.
Thank you.
But what kind of secrets could be hiding behind the doors of a swanky Fifth Avenue apartment?
It smelled a rat in this whole thing. They knew this was bad.
When Barbara Kogan's ex-husband George is shot on the street,
He was executed right on the street in front of his apartment building.
she's too busy having her hair done to say a final farewell at the hospital. George hadn't been a model husband.
Kogan.
But with George dead, instead of divorced, Barbara is sent to collect a huge insurance payout. Sound fishy, anyone?
And Barbara Kogan is the sole beneficiary.
The insurance company actually launched their own investigation.
Initially, they didn't want to pay. They smelled a rat in this whole thing. They knew this was bad.
They could find no evidence pointing to her as being, connected to George's death, and so they ended up paying her out in two separate payments, $2 million at one point and the balance at another.
Barbara pockets a total of $4.3 million in life insurance. But $500 haircuts will snip away at that cash pretty quickly. By 1998, she's spent it all and files for bankruptcy. That's not a grieving widow. That's a merry widow, celebrating.
She lived very lavishly, and a lot of massages, some facelifts, some body work. She went through the money and ended up having to work later. She did some serious spending.
She was basically a greedy individual who loved herself and money.
So the policy is still in effect.
The motive in this case seems clear. A deadly cocktail of revenge and greed.
They honed in on her as they hit for hire. They thought it looked too slick.
But Barbara Kogan seems to have gotten away scot-free. Until
2 years after the murder, somebody got arrested for financial crime. And that person claimed that he had information on the Kogan murder and that somebody he knew by the name of Manuel Martinez, a lawyer, was involved in it. It was there that the police had this huge lead.
Manuel Manny Martinez seems harmless enough.
Manny Martinez was a low-end attorney, handled eviction cases, some marital type things.
New York is a big city. Just who does Manny know?
They started with that morsel of information that Martinez was involved, and basically Martinez was a lawyer, so everybody in his law office and everybody who had any association with him was interviewed.
Detectives discover that Manny Martinez is Barbara Kogan's divorce attorney.
We also found out that a week prior to the homicide, Mrs. Kogan and Manny Martinez had taken a trip together to Puerto Rico.
That trip was for the purpose of Barbara borrowing perhaps $100,000 from her parents to pay for the hit. In addition to that, the lawyer from Manny Martinez's office says, when Martinez came back from Puerto Rico, he said, that George is a dirtbag. He's gotta go, he's gotta go. So you had Martinez talking up getting rid of George. Another huge lead was Martinez's wife.
She was horrified of Mr. Martinez. He said to her that if you don't watch yourself, you're going to wind up just like George Kogan that we had him killed.
I need a solution, all right?
Do you mean what I think you mean?
Yeah, it's exactly what I mean. Do you know anyone?
Joe Buffalino's team is sure they have their man.
So as we're putting these facts together, everything is starting to fall into place.
All right. And we don't need these.
We have the motive and we have the connection with Mrs. Kogan and Manny Martinez for the conspiracy to commit the murder.
Manny Martinez is indicted by a grand jury in 1996 on murder charges. But there's a problem.
We discovered that he was in jail in Mexico.
Mr. Martinez had gotten a job with the Mexican government and stole an enormous amount of money from the government, and he was presently in a Mexican jail serving 13 years.
He'd already served 2, so the New York DA's office sits tight for another 11 years, until Manny is freed.
Our biggest fear was that he was going to pay off the Mexicans and flee. He did not. And then he was brought back and tried.
And he was convicted of conspiring to murder.
In 2008, Manny Martinez is sentenced to 25 years. Now, nearly 20 years after the murder of George Kogan, the net is closing in on his ex-wife, Barbara. Barbara lays low in upstate New York and awaits her fate.
She was very upset. She knew that the walls were closing in on her as well. And her friend invited her to her house, and so Barbara went to her friend's house. And in the meantime, her attorney was making arrangements to surrender her because the indictment was pending.
As she feels her time as a free woman ticking down, Barbara Kogan has one last go-around with her favorite pastime.
So Barbara, she was doing a lot of shopping, buying things and that sort of thing, a lot of meals. I've seen all the checks and receipts.
In November 2008, she's arrested. And just before she faces trial, Barbara decides to cut a deal.
I frankly think Barbara was just tired. She said she didn't want to embarrass her sons, cause them any more grief, go through this trial.
So she pled guilty to a manslaughter and got 12 to 36, which she's serving.
The 20-year case was also a trial for the lawmen who doggedly pursued Barbara Kogan.
Can't get tunnel vision. You have to look at the evidence. You have to look how the case is progressing during the course of the investigation. But you get that gut feeling too, and in your heart, you know who's responsible for what. You knew in our heart that Manny Martinez and Mrs. Barbara Kogan was responsible for the death of Mr. Kogan.
The New York City Police Department did not let go, and they pursued this case over a period of 20 years. Murder happened in 1990, and in late 2008, Barbara was arrested. The biggest nightmare one has as a homicide prosecutor is a murder case, and you have strong suspicion that somebody did the murder, and you also know that they're getting away with it, and that nobody's going to be held accountable. There's a phrase in Deuteronomy which says, justice, justice ye shall pursue. If the detectives hadn't pursued this for 20 years, Barbara Kogan would have gotten away with murder.
As for who actually put 3 bullets into George Kogan's back, the prime suspect is currently serving 25 to 50 years on another charge. He has yet to be charged with George Kogan's murder.
I have a real problem with that. If you've got 2 people in jail, in prison, convicted of murder and conspiring to hire a gunman, yet you don't bring the gunman to trial. It's very, very unusual.
But for the detectives and prosecutors in this case, justice has been served. Money and power offered no protection to the guilty.
You know, there are very often notions that rich people get away with this or rich people get away with that. I think what it says is rich or poor, no matter who you are or what you are, when you take a life, you have to pay. And I think that's an important lesson.
By the time she's eligible for parole, Barbara Kogan will be 80 years old.
To show you how the mighty have fallen, from $20,000 a month American Express bill and a $500 haircut on the day that George was murdered to a $3 haircut at Rikers Island taken from your commissary. That really shows crime does not pay.
Money. The more they had, the more they craved. It bankrolled their opulent lives and drained their hollow hearts. Thanos Papallexis ruled an empire of lies from a blood-soaked throne. And scorned wife Barbara Kogan didn't just get angry, she got even. On the surface, they seemed so smooth and polished, but it took only a scratch to reveal the ice-cold eyes of the killer inside. Till next we meet, behind mansion walls, I'm Christopher Mason.
In our first story, Behind Mansion Walls.
911, what's the problem there?
Lovers on horseback take a deadly ride.
What are you doing?
She was really all about the money.
She was not going to let this golden goose get away.
And later,
he had started taking birth control pills to try to enhance his breast size.
Murder opens a closet full of secrets.
The person on the other end of the phone is telling me that his sister's dying in his arms.
I'm Christopher Mason. The end of a marriage can be a dirty business. With some wealthy people, money comes first, love comes second, and respect for human life, not even a distant third. Faced with losing millions, these husbands and wives chose death before divorce.
What's the problem there?
Stab wound.
Who was stabbed?
Me.
Who stabbed you?
My wife.
Did she do it intentionally?
Yes.
Were you involved in an argument? Sir? Sir?
Those were some of the last words spoken by Dr. Peter Franklin, a man most considered a pillar of his community. But as Peter's life ebbs away on his front lawn, his wife is making her own 911 call. If what she says is true, the night's next casualty will be the good doctor's reputation.
Bainbridge, Ohio. If you make good money in nearby Cleveland, you buy a nice place for your horses out here.
We don't have a lot of murders in this county. We're contiguous to a larger metropolitan area, being Cleveland. Large homes, mansions outside. People have large farms here and more of a bedroom community.
And for many years, if you fell off your horse in these fields, you might go and see Dr. Peter Franklin.
Peter's family was very wealthy.
Take a seat.
And he had quite a large inheritance.
He was raised in New York City in finest of schooling, the kind of guy who appreciated helping other people and being a doctor.
Okay.
When Dr. Franklin isn't at his family practice, he's often out riding with his new wife, Sandra.
Hey, how you doing over this morning?
Peter was divorced. He had a passion for horses, and Sandra was teaching horseback riding lessons.
How about that special place?
And they were both frequent riders. She was 20 years younger than him, and she was a cute, small, attractive person. She always dated very wealthy people, and she glommed onto him right away.
When the two met, it was a thunderstorm. It came together very quickly. It was fast and furious. And within weeks, I believe they were engaged. In months, they were married.
Wealthy doctor, attractive younger wife. A happy life in the country. Nothing strange here. But at Dr. Franklin's office, something a little strange is going on.
I worked for Dr. Franklin for probably 22 years.
In that time, Dr. Franklin built a popular family practice. But in 2003, the atmosphere begins to change.
He dropped out of going to the hospital, didn't go see patients at the hospital. It was all a drug machine over there.
The drug machine is what Dr. Franklin's practice becomes. A cash-only business focused on issuing prescriptions for addictive pain medication. In the medical profession, they call it a script mill.
Can I do you for?
The pain addiction practice was a lot more profitable because basically once you have a patient that's hooked on a narcotic, they need it, and it's very hard to get weaned off of it, and they basically become addicted, and they have to keep coming back and coming back.
Some of Dr. Franklin's patients are addicts, and others are pushers.
You had some people who were there and getting large quantities of these drugs just so they could sell them on the street because they would produce 15, 20, 50 times what they were paying per tablet at the drugstore. So it was an easy way for them to get the drug and then move it on the street.
And when those drugs hit the streets, it starts to draw the attention of law enforcement.
We found in our investigations that a lot of times the drugs that were getting out in the street were all sourcing back to individuals who were getting prescriptions from Dr. Franklin.
According to Dr. Franklin's wife, there's also trouble at home. On August 7th, 2009, she calls 911
I'd like to report a domestic violence incident.
to complain about her husband.
Yes, my husband and I had a fight, and he hit me. I really, really need it documented that he has been violent and that I'm really, really scared of him.
10 days later, she will call again, and this time, it will be a matter of life or death.
My husband attacked me, and I've stabbed him.
And you stabbed him with what?
A knife. A kitchen knife.
When 73-year-old Dr. Peter Franklin meets a perky young equestrian named Sandra, it's love at first sight.
Dr. Franklin can't resist Sandra's youthful beauty, and she enjoys the kind of life his money can bring. A whirlwind romance spins into a lightning-quick waltz down the aisle. But the doctor is not quite the man she thought she married.
He was a difficult person to understand. He was kind of a strange character.
Peter Franklin can be cold and distant. He has trouble understanding people's emotions.
He knew he didn't have appropriate emotions for things. And quite frequently, he didn't display empathy, sympathy, concern. He was just like academic. I mean, imagine any of us being without emotion. That's how he was.
Dr. Franklin is also haunted by a terrible moment in his past.
He and his child and his child's friend went camping.
Feel good? Feel good, okay. You want to go and play? Okay.
And the child was playing with matches near the gas well. When he came upon the scene after hearing the explosion, his child was incinerated nearly. But the other child was just still being burned, and Peter went and took care of the other child. It's hard for most people to comprehend. The guy who's a doctor, the first thing, your natural instincts would be to go after your own child.
Friends of Peter say he was never the same after losing his son.
Enough of it. Just sign the form.
I am not interested in life insurance.
Now he is under pressure and facing a new crisis.
It's $20,000. I am not interested.
You are 20 years older than me. I need the security.
His rushed marriage to Sandra has collapsed into fighting and petty arguments.
Their relationship, it fell apart, I believe, rather quickly. They were in the throes of a divorce.
Sandra says the doctor has a wandering eye.
She was accusing the doctor of having an affair with his office employee, a girl that was very young and actually whom they had both kind of thought of as a daughter.
Meanwhile, all those prescriptions for painkillers have caught the attention of the local police. They raid his clinic, and tension between Peter and Sandra reaches breaking point. Then, on a steamy Sunday evening in August, Sandra Franklin calls 911.
Bainbridge 911, what is your emergency?
My husband attacked me, and I stabbed him.
She called and she basically just said, "Hi, I just stabbed my husband."
And you stabbed him with what?
With a knife! With a kitchen knife!
Okay.
He came at me.
Okay.
He hit me.
She was very, very clear to comment several times on that call that she was hit, that he tried to hit her. Those were her words, that he tried to hit her, so she stabbed him.
Sandra says she's in the hallway of their house when her husband begins to attack her.
You're not
You
getting them.
sign over my assets,
You're not getting
or I
anything.
will
Just
hurt you!
Ah! What are you doing?
She claims that he came after her with hard, sharp objects.
What are you doing? I was trying to more to say that.
She states that she took a knife and she drove this knife into her husband.
What are you doing?
Dr. Franklin then staggers from the house into the yard. And Sandra makes her desperate 911 call.
My husband attacked me, and I've stabbed him.
But out front, Peter is making his own 911 call.
911, what's the problem there?
Stab wounds.
Who stabbed you?
My wife.
And as Peter's life slowly drains away, he goes on to say more.
Were you involved in an argument?
She won.
Sir?
He said she won. I believe he meant that this had been a long time coming, and she basically finally did him in, and she won.
August 2009, police in Bainbridge, Ohio, rushed to the home of Sandra and Peter Franklin. In the yard, they find Peter clinging to life.
The knife's come out. Are you bleeding?
Yes.
Stay on the phone with me, okay?
He called 911 first, and he's basically saying, send help. I think he knew he was bleeding to death.
Sir? Sir?
Inside, they discover his wife, Sandra, and the 12-inch butcher knife she used to stab him.
She was initially arrested for charges of felonious assault.
All I tried to do was defend myself.
She was taken back to the Bainbridge Police Department.
Did he push you, shove you?
Yeah, he smacked me hard in the face and knocked me to the ground.
Is that when you picked the knife up?
He didn't see it. I picked up the knife, and then he had something sharp, and he went like this, and then he put it up to my throat. He said, "I'm gonna kill you."
She was not concerned. She didn't seem concerned at all about her husband, about the condition that he was in.
I feared for my life. He said he was gonna kill me right then.
Also seemed much more concerned about her animals, her cell phone.
I'm worried about the horses because Matt just moved into the barn.
As opposed to her husband and how her husband was doing.
I didn't have any intent to do anything more than defend myself. I didn't want to kill him. I hope he's not dead.
It was only after, probably about an hour or so later after her arrest, that the police department learned that Peter had unfortunately passed. And at that time, they arrested her for murder.
Sandra Franklin wants police to believe that her husband is a violent monster who beat her and threatened her life. Investigators determined that the late doctor is just the opposite. He was a quiet, peaceful man who was terrified of conflict.
From everyone that I interviewed, which I said was probably over 20 people, everyone basically told me the same description of Peter, which was he was very quiet and would not initiate a fight nor even, continue a fight. He was the opposite of that. He was a very gentle person.
And the more they inquire, the more investigators discover that Sandra Franklin may have been the real monster in this marriage.
In everyone that I interviewed, I couldn't find anyone that liked her.
Oh, look at this. Where do you think you're going?
To lunch. It's after 1 o'clock.
Really? Who told you you could go?
They all told me that she was arrogant, paranoid.
May I go to lunch, please?
She was money hungry. She would often be screaming at the employees, firing them.
Enjoy it. You won't have a job for much longer. Go! Get out!
Basically, a very nasty woman was her general demeanor.
Under arrest, Sandra tells anyone who asks that her whirlwind wedding with Peter was all about love. But the evidence found by investigators tells a different story. This marriage is all about money.
She just took over every financial aspect of his life. He had a number of properties that were titled in his name. As soon as they were married, she had them titled all over to herself, telling him that, well, if you ever sued with malpractice suit, they couldn't get at this because it's in my name.
Go on, get out.
She would come into the office at the end of every day, take all the cash out of the cash box, and go. There was no concern for patients there, and it was all about the money. The money, the money, the money. And she spent it as fast as he made it.
Eventually, Dr. Franklin decides enough is enough. Talk turns to divorce, a fatal mistake.
There was a life insurance policy for the sum of $1 million that Peter didn't want.
Just sign the form.
But Sandra really wanted and pushed for it.
You're 72 years old. You need it.
This was due to expire within 2 weeks. So technically, if he was not killed within 2 weeks, that $1 million life insurance policy would have expired.
She was not going to let this golden goose get away.
I picked up the knife.
Sandra wants the police to believe it was kill or be killed, but the evidence tells a different story.
Let me ask you this. When you made contact with him, was it in the kitchen or down the steps?
I don't want to talk anymore.
It was in the kitchen area there.
I will hurt you.
She said that Peter came after her with this unknown object
Oh, what are you doing?
in the kitchen area near the steps. Well, there was no blood whatsoever there.
What are you doing? You're even more insane.
There were a couple droplets of blood near the laundry room. So our independent investigation showed that Peter had to have been in the laundry room.
This wasn't in self-defense. It was a sneak attack.
And I think that she ambushed him and stabbed him. He had to have taken the laundry and stopped the bleeding because he was a doctor, he would know. And then he went out of the house and got away from her to call 911.
Peter's out in the yard clutching his laundry against his chest, as a doctor would do, trying to compress the wound. He called on his cell phone, and he made his call saying that, I've been stabbed and trying to get help for himself because he didn't believe she was going to come out and help him. This wasn't a loving woman. She hoped he bled to death out there.
She won.
When police arrive, Sandra tells them that Peter had come at her with a shiny instrument.
We had a specialized crime scene unit come and examine the scene. They're experts in crime scene, and they didn't find any weapon whatsoever, as Sandra described, that Peter would have attacked her with anywhere.
At a police interview, Sandra points to superficial wounds as proof of the altercation.
Look at these scratches. This is what I'm talking about.
Wounds that seemed to appear after her arrest.
When she called 911 and the EMS people came to look at her for injuries, they didn't see any injuries on her. After she was in the holding cell alone, and then she was looked at again, she had several scratch marks on her chest, on her arm that we believe were self-induced.
Sandra's scratches are barely skin deep,
Don't you believe me?
in stark contrast to the wound that killed her husband.
She had put a knife 4.5 inches deep in his chest and transected bone. This was not something that was done just to nick him or scare him or try to keep him at bay. This was done to kill him.
And the motive for Peter's murder? Money, pure and simple.
The only one who would actually gain something from Peter's death would be Sandra. She would be the sole heir to the $1 million policy. She was the heir to the property that he had prior to the marriage, as well as the property that they were living on at the time, her country estate.
I don't know if Sandra was capable of loving anyone. She was really all about the money. Everything she did was around money.
Investigators believe that the conversion of Dr. Franklin's practice from respectable clinic to cash-only script mill was also driven by his money-hungry wife.
She was completely behind it. When Sandra got into the operation, she wanted to change it over to a pain management / script mill.
It tends to be a more lucrative business. He no longer accepted insurance. Basically, it was a cash-only type practice that was, again, driven mainly by Sandra.
Sandra only had dollar bills swimming around in her head.
After a 4-day trial, Sandra's claims about her husband's violent ways and her battle to save her life are put to the jury.
I'd like them to know that I loved him. And also that he brought his fate upon himself.
It takes them 2 days to make a decision. Guilty.
She thought we were a bunch of country bumpkins and that she could manipulate the system out here by hiring high-priced legal counsel and the best experts that she could afford. And the one thing you can't buy is the jurors, and you can't buy the facts.
Sandra Franklin is floored by the judgment. For once, she didn't get to bully her way through a situation. And she can't contain her anger.
As the jurors were filing out after convicting her, she yelled, "Shame on you." It was the first time I've heard an outburst like that in the many trials I've been in. And it was just completely out of place.
For Sandy McDermott, Dr. Franklin's former assistant, the conviction means justice has been served.
I think she really thought she was going to get away with it. She really played up this, oh, I'm petite and small and helpless, and Peter's this massive big guy. Well, he was a massive klutz. He was your typical major geek. He was so incompetent with tools. I doubt that he could have held on to her to hold that penknife up her neck, which she was convinced was going to kill her.
Dr. Peter Franklin, murdered at age 73, is cremated. His ashes are spread on the grave of his 10-year-old son, tragically killed all those years ago. Today, Sandra Franklin is in the Ohio Reformatory for Women, serving her sentence of 15 years to life for murder.
I always thought that she would divorce him. I guess it was not in my mind to think that she would plunge a 12-inch butcher knife into his chest.
July 14th, 2000, I remember it like it was yesterday. I had just started my night shift, and we got a call for a shooting. Because we're so close to July 4th, I remember asking the dispatcher, we get a lot of fireworks calls at that time of year, so I asked the dispatcher, I said, can you confirm and make sure it's not fireworks? Her response was, no, it's not fireworks. The person on the other end of the phone is telling me his sister's dying in his arms.
Wenham, Massachusetts. By July 2000, Sergeant John Gray had served in the local police department for 4 years. He is about to walk in to his first murder scene.
It was pitch black. It's the middle of the night. Not a lot of lighting on the property. And went up on foot to get to the house because I didn't want to be a target. We approached the house, and it's a pretty large mansion. Just people screaming and panicking.
Check it out upstairs. How long ago was she shot? A few minutes.
Everyone's screaming at us at once, trying to say, we think he's still in the house. I think he's upstairs. He's got a gun. Mrs. Sharp's brother was holding his sister in his arms. It was obvious to me that she had passed away.
Lying dead on the floor of her own house is 44-year-old Karen Sharp, caring mother of 3, a popular neighbor, and a woman with more than $3 million in assets to her name. A small fortune that cost Karen her life.
The story of Karen Hatfield and Richard Sharp begins in 1972 with a love affair between high school classmates.
He took one look at her, was immediately smitten, and she was a very shy girl, so he started kind of lavishing some attention and asking her out.
Things move fast. Karen gets pregnant. By graduation day, she's a mom. 3 months later, she's Richard's bride.
Karen would spend umpteen hours with the children, playing with them, getting down on the ground with them, reading to them, waking up every morning, making them breakfast, making breakfast for not only them, but also the neighborhood children. It was common knowledge that that was the type of person she was.
While Karen devotes herself to raising her 3 children, her husband becomes a doctor.
Dr. Sharp was very pale. He had very long hair. He kind of looked like a bad version of Mick Jagger, perhaps.
Shouldn't hurt too much. It's a bit like being flicked with a rubber band.
After he got his medical degree, he stated he wanted to cure cancer. That was his long-term ambition, but he decided there was money in skincare.
He was a pretty bright businessman. He bought laser machines for hair removal, and he ended up making millions of dollars from the business side as opposed to from the medical side.
In the year 2000, Richard Sharp claimed he was worth about $5 million, which then was probably, double what it is now.
Hey, let's have a look.
So they were pretty wealthy. They lived in a beautiful mansion in Gloucester, Massachusetts. They had some other places around there. So they lived the good life. He always drove a Porsche.
Hey.
Yeah, thank you.
He knew how to have a good time.
To those on the outside, the Sharps seemed to be living the dream. Until the summer of 2000.
Oh my God.
Who would want to kill Karen Sharp? And in the aftermath of her murder, why can't anyone find her husband Richard? Police dig for answers and find out this was no fairy tale marriage.
Dr. Sharp was an abusive boyfriend, became an abusive husband. He was physically abusive, emotionally abusive, and verbally abusive.
They had a terrible marital relationship. There was a story that I think on New Year's party, he completely lost his temper and he stabbed Karen in the face with a fork. And he was incredibly violent. He would drink a lot, and he'd also be self-medicating himself with drugs.
For 27 years, Karen's too afraid to leave her husband.
It was a classic battering situation because Dr. Sharp was a very controlling individual. He was a control freak. She did not have the means or the wherewithal to leave the marriage.
Until her husband hands her a golden key.
Go play in your room.
He'd signed over all his property to her because he was scared because he was being sued by a computer company for a patent.
Here?
Yeah.
Dr. Sharp, wanting to outsmart the opposition,
And just down the line.
decided to transfer millions of dollars into Karen's name so that he would be judgment-proof. But when Dr. Sharp transferred all of these assets, these millions of dollars in real estate, into her name, she felt empowered. And now she was able to break the yoke, break the chains of the domestic abuse, and she found her voice and decided she was going to leave Richard Sharp.
Richard Sharp thrives on control and money. Now his wife has them both. And she dares to go one step further. She leaves Richard and begins an affair.
She started seeing the builder who was doing all this building on their new house in Wenham, Massachusetts. He was very, very jealous.
Karen wants a divorce. In a secret affidavit, she details all the reasons why their marriage should be dissolved. And domestic violence is only the tip of the iceberg.
He would do bizarre things. I mean, he did strange things from the beginning, but his bizarreness only escalated as the relationship went on.
Now Karen's been shot dead. Has she taken her husband's bizarre secrets to her grave? And why can't anyone find him?
People were calling with tips of where he might be or where he could be. We got all kinds of different information. He could be in the Caribbean by now, or he might be dressed up as a woman.
For 27 years, Karen Sharp was a doctor's wife with a perfect family. Then, she was shot dead.
Town of Wenham, it's a pretty small town, so we don't get a lot of murders in this town.
As Officer John Gray looks into the dead eyes of Karen Sharp, he is surrounded by eyewitnesses to her murder.
It's her husband, her ex-husband.
There was no doubt that it was him. By witness accounts, everybody there said it was Dr. Richard Sharp had killed his wife.
On the night of her shooting, Karen had been celebrating her impending divorce with her brother and her friends.
We should. Be good.
Babysitter saw the door open, and she saw a pale-looking man. And Richard Sharp reached back, he pulled out a rifle, he leveled it at her. Severed her spinal column, and she died on the spot.
True crime writer John Glatt delved into the twisted psyche of Richard Sharp while researching a book on the case.
Well, I thought the Richard Sharp case was a fascinating case. I mean, it had elements of true crime which I'd never seen before. I'd written 20 books, and this is definitely one of the most interesting. It was a, very charismatic personality, very, very different. And I just wanted to find out what made him tick. I mean, whether I did is an open question, and I don't really think I did, but it was fascinating trying to get in his shoes for a little bit and see where he came from and what drove him to murder.
Police appeal for help to track down Dr. Sharp and receive some startling advice.
You might want to look for a woman matching the description.
Dr. Sharp was a cross-dresser, a transvestite.
He had a fetish, I guess, that he would dress like a woman on different occasions.
Police are told this had been going on throughout Dr. Sharp's marriage. He had even pulled outfits from his wife's underwear drawer. And then...
Richard Sharp was obsessed with his weight, and his daughter, who by that time was 18, was beautiful, had a model's figure, and Richard felt that he looked better in her underwear and clothes than he did in Karen's, so he started dressing in her clothes.
Even his wife's birth control pills weren't safe.
He had started taking estrogen birth control pills to try to enhance his breast size.
In recent years, Karen had worried about the effect on her children.
The young son, on a couple of occasions, would be getting ready to go to school, and Richard would come in drag.
How dare you come in here dressed like that?
And he looked like he'd been out all night, his mascara was running, his hair was all over the place.
Richard, in front of Mikey, get out! How dare you do this in front of him?
And Karen was just horrified by this.
For years, the respected doctor's cross-dressing has been hidden from the public eye. But that's about to change.
Dr. Sharp had checked into this motel in New Hampshire and had used his own credit card. They had the local police there, the state police from Massachusetts. They threw a canister of tear gas into the room, and Dr. Sharp came out without incident.
28 hours after Karen Sharp's murder, Richard Sharp is arrested. Placed on trial for murder, his bizarre sexual behavior could become his best shot at freedom. It's time for the doctor to make his secrets public.
When they read the January issue of Boston Magazine, society matrons almost choke on their afternoon tea. Above a caption that reads, "Sharp-dressed man. Is that nice doctor from Gloucester?" in a low-cut blouse and fishnet stockings. The door to Dr. Sharp's closet has been flung wide open.
It did come out during the trial that Dr. Sharp was a cross-dresser, a transvestite. The government, we did not present that evidence. That was defense evidence to try to show how crazy Dr. Sharp was.
On trial for first-degree murder, Richard Sharp pleads temporary insanity. His defense team links his cross-dressing to his traumatic childhood.
Sharp was scarred from a very early age by his father. Beat up Richard and his older brother, but he didn't beat up the sister. So Richard found sanctuary by dressing up in her clothes, because somehow it would, take him to another state of mind where he felt safe and secure that his father wasn't going to beat him up. I think Richard Sharp was a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde, and it depended on what drugs or how much drink he'd had at a certain time. But he could be incredibly charming and really get whatever he wanted, be very nice. He had a charming smile. But then he could just go off the hook and lose his temper and become incredibly violent and terrify people. And he was also very antisocial. Later, I think the forensic psychologist described him as schizophrenic with narcissistic tendencies. And I think this all rooted really from his childhood and his relationship with his father.
In court, Dr. Sharp plays up the insanity defense.
I actually watched the trial, and he was obviously playing to the audience and playing to the jury. And there'd be certain times where he would just sit with his head in his hands, his eyes closed for hours on end. And then he'd suddenly sort of come to life, and you could just see at the trial, it was very, very bizarre.
But the evidence against him poses a difficult question. Just how crazy is this guy?
The prosecution said it was a very carefully laid plan, and he knew exactly what he was doing.
Dr. Sharp had pulled into the beginning of the driveway near the street, shut off the lights, and skulked up this 300-foot driveway carrying the rifle.
Oh my God, Richard! God!
After he shot Karen, he then fled the scene. He knew what he was doing. He realized he had done something bad. He fled to avoid prosecution.
All that suggests Dr. Sharp was calm and collected when he shot his wife. Not legally insane, just cold, controlling, and greedy.
As the prosecutor, I tried to show the jury that this was not a case of insanity. The overwhelming motivation was control. He had had control, complete and thorough control over Karen Sharp for 27 years, and now that was disintegrating. And more importantly, his measure of worth, of self-worth, was by the amount of money that he had. And he lost control of that money.
So I think all these things kind of built up and drove him to murder. I think Richard killed Karen because I think there were a number of things. Firstly, he'd lost control. He couldn't face the fact that she was leaving him for somebody else, and he was losing her. I think there was also, he didn't want to pay her the money that she was going to get in the divorce. She had a very, very smart divorce lawyer. that was going to take him for at least 50% of what he had, and I don't think he could face that either.
The jury spends 2 days contemplating the tragic tale of Karen and Richard Sharp. They decide that the doctor is guilty of first-degree murder. He receives the mandatory sentence of life without parole. But his life of crime isn't over.
One of his fellow prisoners was about to get paroled, and Dr. Sharp wanted this prisoner, once he got out, to take a hit out on the prosecutor, namely me, and murder me.
So, remember everything I told you?
And he was going to pay this man tens of thousands of dollars if he was able to take me out.
What's the name of the prosecution?
It was a little disconcerting, but frankly, Dr. Sharp was such an inept criminal that at the end of the day, I did not really feel like I was going to suffer any harm at his hands or someone that he was going to be able to solicit.
And Sharp also plans an elaborate attempt to break out of prison.
He had hatched, while he was in custody, an escape scheme. He had hired one of the other inmates, another prisoner, to arrange to break him out of custody. And at one point, Dr. Sharp was going to Mass General Hospital for an MRI or a CAT scan. And he got this other inmate, told him he would pay him tens of thousands of dollars if he would get some people to shoot the guards that were holding him and help him escape and flee the country. And there would be a big bonus for them when he passed the border in Canada.
But the scheme never gets off the ground.
The inmate realized he didn't have the money anymore after reading the papers and turned him into the cops.
The murder of Karen Sharp was especially tragic because it occurred on the first day in 27 years that Karen had felt truly free of her abusive husband.
On July 14th, Karen was about to have what she told others was going to be her coming out party. She was going to enjoy herself. There was going to be a harbor cruise in Gloucester Harbor. She invited her brother, with whom she was very close, and brought his girlfriend and the girlfriend's daughter along. There were other family members around, and Karen was just shining that day in a very, very good mood.
I think Karen had thought that she'd finally made the break from Richard after 27 years of marriage. She wanted to be her own woman. She was hoping that night was really her divorce from him, that she had a new power and freedom.
Until Richard arrives to spoil the party.
I can't imagine the horror when she saw him holding a rifle aimed at her. You know, I just can't imagine what was going through her mind.
The tragedy of this whole thing is he had a restraining order against him. Unfortunately, he violated the order, and at the same time that he violated it, he killed his wife.
Then in 2009, Dr. Richard Sharp plays his final card, hanging himself in his prison cell.
I didn't shed many tears for Dr. Sharp. I thought that he was an evil, abusive, manipulative murderer. And if he wanted to take his own life, that's fine.
This is a guy that had everything. He had the brain, he had the drive, he had a beautiful wife and children. He could have made such a success of his life. And instead, it just ended up in a jail cell with him hanging from the roof.
The children had to witness their mother being killed by their father. He ruined a family, and he ruined a life, and I just think it was a huge tragedy for these children.
Was it for love or money? These marriages were poisoned by greed. Dr. Richard Sharp couldn't bear to share a cent of his great fortune, and Sandra Franklin was terrified her golden goose would escape. Two couples headed to the courts until one partner made a brutal decision. Forget about the alimony. They chose death before divorce. Till next we meet, behind mansion walls, I'm Christopher Mason.